8 hidden signs someone secretly dislikes you but won't say it. Hey there, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where everything seemed fine on the surface, but deep down, something just didn't feel right? Maybe you couldn't quite put your finger on it, but when you were around a certain person, their smile felt a little too forced. Their words didn't carry the warmth they should have, or their energy just seemed off. It's like they're playing the part of a friend, a colleague, or even an acquaintance. But your gut is screaming that something isn't adding up. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. It's one of the trickiest and most frustrating feelings to deal with, when someone secretly dislikes you but tries to hide it. And let's be real, no one's going to come right out and say, "Hey, I don't like you." That's not how most people operate. Instead, they'll disguise their true feelings behind politeness, subtle actions, and, honestly, a little bit of emotional camouflage. Here's the thing, those emotions they're trying so hard to hide, they leak out in other ways. Whether they realize it or not, their words, body language, and behavior will eventually give them away. All it takes is knowing what to look for, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into today. I get it, this might seem a little uncomfortable to think about. After all, who wants to consider the possibility that someone in their life doesn't actually like them? But here's why this is so important. Recognizing these hidden signs isn't just about spotting negativity. It's about protecting your energy, your peace of mind, and your self-worth. When you know how to read the room and understand when someone doesn't have your best interests at heart, you can make better decisions about who you let into your life and who you don't. Now let me be clear, just because someone shows one or two of these signs doesn't mean they automatically dislike you. Humans are complex, and people have bad days or moments where they're distracted or stressed. But when you notice a pattern, when certain behaviors keep popping up consistently, then it's worth paying attention to. So, stick with me as we uncover 8 hidden signs someone secretly dislikes you, even though they're trying their best to cover it up. By the end of this, you'll have the tools to spot these subtle cues and handle them with confidence. Are you ready? Let's get started. Sign 1, overly polite or fake behavior. All right, let's dive into the first sign, overly polite or fake behavior. Now, this one can be tricky to catch because on the surface, it might seem like the person is being nice. They smile, they say all the right things, and they go out of their way to act pleasant around you. But here's the catch. Their behavior doesn't feel genuine. Have you ever had someone compliment you, but their tone made you second-guess their sincerity? Like they might say something like, "Oh, wow, you look so great today." But their tone feels a little forced, or their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. It's subtle, but you can sense it. It's almost as if they're trying too hard to appear nice because they don't want you to suspect how they really feel. Here's the thing about overly polite behavior. It's not kindness. It's a mask. People who secretly dislike you but don't want you to know it will often hide behind excessive politeness to avoid confrontation. Why? Because being overtly rude might cause conflict or make them look bad in front of others. So instead, they'll keep things civil on the outside, while their real feelings bubble just beneath the surface. Here's an example. Imagine you're working with someone who constantly says things like, "Of course I'm happy to help," or, "Oh, don't worry about it." But their body language tells a completely different story. Maybe they sigh heavily when they think you're not looking, or their smile vanishes the moment you turn away. That disconnect between their words and their energy is a dead giveaway. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people are naturally polite, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the key here is to pay attention to consistency. If their behavior feels performative, overly rehearsed, or like they're trying to keep you at arm's length while still being nice, that's when you should take note. Here's how you can spot overly polite or fake behavior. They rarely show vulnerability or genuine emotion around you. Their compliments feel forced or exaggerated, like they're saying what they think they should say, rather than what they mean. They're quick to agree with you on everything, but don't actually engage in meaningful conversation. So, if someone's politeness feels more like a script than a genuine connection, it might be time to ask yourself, are they being nice because they care, or because they're trying to hide something? Sign 2. Backhanded compliments. Let's move on to the second sign. Backhanded compliments. This one's a classic. Backhanded compliments are those sneaky little remarks that sound like praise at first, but when you really think about them, they're actually an insult wrapped in a pretty package. For example, someone might say, "Wow, you're so brave to wear something like that." At first, it might sound like they're impressed by your confidence, but the underlying message is actually critical. They're saying they wouldn't dare wear it themselves, and maybe you shouldn't either. Another example might be, "You did such a great job on that project. I honestly didn't think you'd be able to pull it off." Now, what's happening here? Sure, they're complimenting your success, but they've also just let you know that they didn't believe in your abilities to begin with. People who secretly dislike you often use backhanded compliments as a way to undermine you without coming across as outright rude. It's a form of passive aggression that allows them to express their true feelings without facing the consequences of being openly negative. Here's why backhanded compliments are so telling. They reveal envy, resentment, or even insecurity on the part of the person giving them. They might dislike you because they feel threatened by you in some way. Maybe you're more confident, more skilled, or more liked by others, and the backhanded compliment is their way of leveling the playing field. So, how can you recognize a backhanded compliment when it happens? The compliment has a sting to it. It might make you pause and think, wait, was that a compliment or an insult? There's often a comparison involved. You're really good at this, especially for someone with no experience. The tone of voice or facial expression doesn't match the words. For instance, they might say something positive, but their tone feels dismissive or condescending. When you notice this happening, it's important to trust your instincts. If a compliment leaves you feeling worse instead of better, it probably wasn't a genuine compliment to begin with. Now, here's the kicker. Backhanded compliments can sometimes be hard to call out, especially in the moment. That's because they're often subtle enough to give the other person plausible deniability. If you confront them, they might say something like, "Oh, I didn't mean it like that." You're taking it the wrong way. And just like that, they shift the blame onto you. So, how do you handle backhanded compliments? First, recognize them for what they are, a reflection of their feelings, not yours. Then, decide how you want to respond. You can choose to let it slide if the relationship isn't important to you, or you can call it out in a calm and confident way, like, "That's an interesting thing to say. What do you mean by that?" At the end of the day, backhanded compliments are more about the person giving them than they are about you. So, don't let them shake your confidence. Instead, use them as a signal to pay closer attention to the dynamic and decide whether this is someone you really want in your corner. Sign 3. Exclusion from conversations or activities. Let's move on to the third sign. Exclusion from conversations or activities. This one can sting because it often makes you feel invisible or unimportant, and that's exactly the point. When someone secretly dislikes you, they might not openly shut you out, but they'll subtly exclude you in ways that are harder to call out. Have you ever been in a group conversation where everyone's engaged, laughing and sharing stories, but one person consistently ignores what you have to say? Maybe they don't respond when you speak, interrupt you mid-sentence, or act like you're not even there. Even worse, have you ever found out about plans or events after the fact, only to realize that you weren't invited? If this happens repeatedly, it's not an accident. It's a sign that someone might be purposely excluding you. Here's how this works. When someone secretly dislikes you, they'll try to create distance between you and the group. This can happen in social circles, at work, or even in family settings. Instead of confronting you directly, they might isolate you by subtly leaving you out of conversations, making you feel like an outsider without being overtly rude. Here are some common ways this can play out. They forget to loop you in. For example, they might organize a group outing and conveniently leave you off the invite list. Then, when you bring it up, they might say something like, "Oh, I thought you were busy," or "I didn't think you'd want to come." They don't acknowledge your input. If you're in a meeting or a group discussion, they might ignore your suggestions or act like someone else came up with your idea. They talk around you. They'll engage with everyone else in the group but avoid making eye contact or responding to you directly. Why do people do this? Well, exclusion is a passive-aggressive way to assert power or express dislike without creating open conflict. It's their way of saying, "You don't belong," without actually saying it. The tricky part is that this behavior can feel incredibly isolating, especially if you're the only one noticing it. Other people in the group might not pick up on it because the exclusion is often subtle. But trust your instincts. If you're consistently being left out or dismissed, it's a sign that something deeper might be going on. So, what can you do about it? Start by observing patterns. Is this behavior happening consistently with the same person or group? If so, consider whether this is a relationship you want to invest in. Remember, the right people will value your presence and contributions. You deserve to be in spaces where you feel seen, heard, and appreciated. Sign 4. Disengagement and fading interest. Now let's talk about the fourth sign, disengagement and fading interest. This one can be especially painful because it often happens gradually, making it harder to notice at first. But when someone secretly dislikes you, they'll show their disinterest in subtle ways, by emotionally checking out of conversations, avoiding meaningful interactions, or giving you the bare minimum of their attention. Have you ever been talking to someone and felt like their mind was a million miles away? Maybe they're giving you short, one-word answers, avoiding eye contact, or glancing at their phone while you're speaking. If you ask them a follow-up question, they might respond with something vague or dismissive, like they're just waiting for the interaction to be over. That's disengagement. Here's what this looks like in real life. They stop asking about your life. A person who genuinely cares about you will ask questions like, "How's work going?" or "How are you feeling?" But someone who secretly dislikes you will avoid asking personal questions. They're not interested in building a connection. They don't engage with your stories or opinions. When you share something, they might respond with, "Oh, cool," or simply nod without following up. It's like they're doing the bare minimum to keep the conversation moving. They avoid extended interaction. If you're in a group setting, they might find reasons to talk to other people instead of you. Or, if it's a one-on-one situation, they might cut the conversation short with excuses like, "I've got to run," or "I'll catch up with you later." Why does this happen? Disengagement is a subtle but clear way for someone to show that they're not interested in fostering a deeper relationship with you. Unlike outright hostility, which is easy to recognize, this behavior feels more passive, but the emotional impact is just as real. One of the biggest giveaways of disengagement is a lack of reciprocity. In healthy interactions, there's a natural give and take. You share something, they respond with interest, and the conversation flows back and forth. But when someone secretly dislikes you, that flow is broken. They'll give you just enough to seem polite, but not enough to show genuine interest. So, how do you handle this? First, don't take it personally. Disengagement often says more about them than it does about you. Maybe they're dealing with their own insecurities, or maybe their dislike stems from something unrelated to who you are. Either way, it's not your responsibility to force a connection with someone who isn't willing to engage. Instead, focus your energy on people who reciprocate your efforts. Surround yourself with those who are genuinely interested in your thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Life's too short to waste time chasing the approval of people who've already checked out. Sign 5. Passive-Aggressiveness. All right, let's move on to a big one. Passive-Aggressiveness. This is one of the most common signs that someone secretly dislikes you. Why? Because it allows them to express their feelings of resentment or negativity without openly confronting you. Instead of saying what they really mean, they'll use sarcasm, subtle digs, or small actions that leave you questioning whether you're overthinking or if they're actually trying to undermine you. Spoiler alert, it's usually the latter. Passive-aggressiveness can show up in all kinds of ways. For example, someone might say something like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were coming. I guess we'll have to make room for one more." On the surface, it might sound like they're accommodating you, but the tone and phrasing make it clear that your presence isn't exactly welcome. Another classic example, sarcasm. They might say something like, "Wow, that's such a bold choice," when referring to your outfit, tone dripping with judgment. Or they might jokingly say, "Oh, you're so lucky things just work out for you," as if your hard work and effort don't matter. But passive-aggressiveness doesn't stop at words. It can also show up in actions. Let's say you're working on a team project, and you notice that this person, accidentally, forgets to send you important updates, or waits until the last minute to give you information you need. Or maybe they purposely drag their feet when you ask them for help, saying something like, "Sure, I'll get to it when I can." But you both know they have no intention of prioritizing your request. Why do people behave this way? Passive-aggressive behavior often stems from a fear of confrontation. Instead of addressing their dislike for you directly, they use subtle and indirect methods to express their frustration or disdain. It's a way to maintain plausible deniability. They can always say, "I didn't mean it like that," if you call them out. So, how can you spot passive-aggressiveness? Here are some red flags to look for. Sarcastic remarks that don't feel playful, but rather cutting. Intentional procrastination when you ask for their help or cooperation. Subtle jabs or digs disguised as jokes. Behavior that's intentionally inconvenient for you, like forgetting deadlines or leaving you out of the loop. How should you respond to this kind of behavior? First, don't let their passive-aggressiveness pull you into a cycle of frustration or self-doubt. Recognize it for what it is, a reflection of their feelings, not your worth. If it's a relationship worth salvaging, you can address the behavior directly by saying something like, "I noticed your comment earlier, and it felt a little off. Is everything okay between us?" This puts the ball in their court and gives them an opportunity to explain themselves or admit their true feelings. However, if their passive-aggressiveness becomes a pattern, it might be best to limit your interactions with them. Protect your peace by focusing on people who bring positivity into your life, not subtle hostility. Sign 6. Negative or defensive body language. Let's talk about body language, one of the most telling indicators of how someone really feels about you. Words can lie, but the body often doesn't. When someone secretly dislikes you, their body language will usually give them away, even if they're trying to hide their true emotions. Think about it. Have you ever been around someone who claims to be fine, but their crossed arms, furrowed brows, or lack of eye contact tell a completely different story? That's because our bodies naturally react to how we feel, even when we're trying to mask those feelings. Here are some examples of negative or defensive body language to look out for. Avoiding eye contact. If someone dislikes you, they might struggle to maintain eye contact during conversations. They could look away frequently or seem distracted, as if they'd rather not be engaged with you. Crossed arms or closed-off posture. When someone's arms are crossed, or they lean away from you, It's often a sign of defensiveness or discomfort. It creates a physical barrier between you and them, signaling that they don't want to connect, turning their body away from you. In group settings, they might angle their body toward others and away from you, showing a preference for engaging with everyone else but you. Tense or stiff movements. If their shoulders are rigid, their facial expressions are tight, or their gestures feel forced, it could be a sign they're uncomfortable in your presence. Eye rolls or heavy sighs. These micro-expressions are subtle but powerful indicators of irritation or disdain. If you catch them rolling their eyes while you're talking, even briefly, it's a clear sign they're not enjoying the interaction. What makes body language so revealing is that it's often subconscious. While someone might carefully choose their words to appear polite, they can't always control how their body reacts. For example, someone might say, "Oh, it's so nice to see you," but their stiff posture and fake smile tell a completely different story. So, how can you tell if their body language is a sign of hidden dislike or just a reflection of their mood that day? Context and consistency are key. If they only act this way occasionally, it might just be a bad day or a stressful moment. But if their body language is consistently closed off, defensive, or negative around you, it's likely a deeper issue. Here's a tip. Observe how they interact with others. If their energy shifts dramatically when talking to someone else, becoming more relaxed, open, and engaged, then their negative body language around you probably isn't a coincidence. How do you handle this? First, don't jump to conclusions right away. People's body language can be influenced by a lot of factors, including stress, fatigue, or even social anxiety. However, if you notice consistent signs of defensive or negative body language directed specifically at you, consider whether this is someone worth investing your time and energy into. Remember, your peace is priceless, and surrounding yourself with positive, supportive people should always be your priority. Sign 7. Unnecessary competition or one-upmanship. All right, let's talk about something that's both frustrating and a little exhausting. Unnecessary competition or one-upmanship. Have you ever noticed someone who always seems to turn every interaction into a competition? No matter what you say or do, they find a way to overshadow you, outshine you, or subtly dismiss your accomplishments. If so, that might be a clear sign they secretly dislike you. Here's the thing. When someone dislikes you, they may feel the need to put you down in subtle ways, to make themselves feel superior. This often comes from insecurity or jealousy. But instead of dealing with those feelings in a healthy way, they channel them into this need to win or constantly prove they're better than you. Here's what this behavior might look like. Always trying to outdo your achievements. For instance, you might casually mention that you ran a 5K last weekend and they immediately respond with, "Oh, that's great. I ran a 10K last month and it was so much harder," downplaying your success. If you share something you're proud of, like a promotion at work, they might say something like, "Oh, nice, but doesn't that just mean more stress for you?" It's their way of diminishing your win while pretending to care, interrupting to share their own story. Imagine you're telling a story about a fun trip you just went on, and before you can even finish, they jump in with, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of when I went to Europe last year. It was amazing." They're not engaging with your story. They're shifting the spotlight onto themselves. What's driving this behavior? It's often rooted in a desire to assert dominance. People who secretly dislike you might feel threatened by your success, personality, or presence, so they constantly try to one-up you to regain a sense of control. This is especially common in competitive environments like workplaces, social groups, or even within families. Here's the key to spotting this. Watch for patterns. If it feels like every conversation with this person turns into a competition, and you always walk away feeling drained or diminished, That's a major red flag. So, how do you handle unnecessary competition or one-upmanship? The best strategy is to disengage. Don't feed into the competition, and don't feel pressured to match their energy. For example, if they say something like, "Oh, I did something even harder than that," you can respond with a simple, "That's awesome," and leave it at that. By not reacting, you take away their power to overshadow you. If the relationship matters to you, you can address the behavior directly by saying something like, "It feels like we're always competing in conversations, and I don't think we need to. I'd really like to just connect with you instead." If they value the relationship, they'll take your feedback seriously. If not, it might be time to reassess how much energy you're putting into this dynamic. Sign 8. Sudden mood shifts around you. Let's dive into the 8th and final sign. Sudden mood shifts around you. This one can be a little hard to miss because it's often dramatic and noticeable. When someone secretly dislikes you, their mood might noticeably shift whenever you're around. They could go from cheerful and relaxed to cold, irritable, or even tense the moment you walk into the room. For example, imagine you're at a party or in a meeting, and you notice that this person is laughing and chatting easily with everyone else. But as soon as you join the conversation, their energy changes. Maybe their smile fades, their tone becomes curt, or they suddenly seem eager to wrap up the discussion and move on. It's almost as if your presence puts a damper on their mood, and it's not exactly subtle. Here's what this behavior might look like. Body language changes when you're around. For instance, they might cross their arms, lean away, or avoid looking at you altogether. Their tone of voice shifts. They might go from warm and engaging to clipped or dismissive when speaking to you. They become impatient or irritable. For example, if you ask them a question, they might respond with a short, "I don't know," or act like you're inconveniencing them. They suddenly withdraw. If they were actively engaging with the group, they might get quiet, excuse themselves, or find a reason to leave the room when you arrive. Why does this happen? Sudden mood shifts are often a subconscious reaction. When someone dislikes you but is trying to hide it, they may not even realize how much their energy changes in your presence. Their body language, tone, and behavior are all ways of expressing discomfort or irritation that they can't fully suppress. One important thing to note is that these mood shifts are usually consistent. If it happens once or twice, it could just be a coincidence or a bad day. But if it happens every time you're around, it's a sign that this person has some underlying negative feelings toward you. So, what can you do about it? First, don't internalize their behavior. Remember, their dislike of you often has more to do with them, their insecurities, biases, or unresolved issues, than it does with you. If you've done nothing to harm them, then their behavior is their responsibility to address, not yours. However, if this is someone you have to interact with regularly, like a coworker or family member, you can take a proactive approach. Try having a calm and neutral conversation, saying something like, "I've noticed that our interactions feel a little tense sometimes. Is there something we need to clear up?" This gives them a chance to express their feelings or, at the very least, reflect on their behavior. If they deny there's an issue but their mood shifts persist, the best thing you can do is protect your energy. Limit your interactions. Keep things polite but professional, and focus on building connections with people who value and uplift you. Life is too short to spend it walking on eggshells around people who aren't willing to address their negativity. Conclusion: trust your instincts and protect your energy. So we've gone through the 8 hidden signs someone secretly dislikes you, but is trying to hide it. Overly polite or fake behavior, backhanded compliments, exclusion from conversations or activities, disengagement and fading interest, passive-aggressiveness, negative or defensive body language, unnecessary competition or one-upmanship, and sudden mood shifts around you. If some of these signs felt all too familiar, don't worry, you're not alone. The truth is, not everyone in life is going to like you, and that's completely okay. You could be the kindest, most talented, and genuine person in the world, and still, someone might secretly dislike you. It's a reflection of them, their insecurities, unresolved feelings, or even jealousy, not a reflection of your worth. The real power lies in being able to recognize these subtle cues and protecting your energy. By understanding these signs, you're no longer in the dark. You're equipped with the awareness to spot unhealthy dynamics and take action. But what does that action look like? 1. Recognize without overreacting. First and foremost, it's important not to jump to conclusions too quickly. Humans are complicated, and everyone has off days. Someone might exhibit one or two of these signs occasionally, but that doesn't automatically mean they dislike you. The key is to look for patterns. Are these behaviors consistent? Are they directed specifically at you? If so, trust your instincts. Your gut rarely lies. 2. Don't take it personally. When you realize someone secretly dislikes you, your first instinct might be to question yourself. What did I do wrong? But here's the truth. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone, and you certainly don't need to chase the approval of people who don't see your value. Their dislike is their issue, not yours. Don't let it chip away at your confidence. 3. Set boundaries. Once you recognize these signs, it's time to protect your peace. If someone is consistently making you feel excluded, diminished, or uncomfortable, set boundaries. That might mean limiting how much time you spend with them, focusing on surface-level interactions, or even distancing yourself entirely if the relationship feels toxic. 4. Choose your battles wisely. Sometimes it might be worth addressing the issue head-on, especially if it's someone you care about, like a close friend, family member, or coworker you interact with daily. In those cases, have an open and calm conversation. For example, you might say something like, "I've noticed some tension between us, and I want to make sure we're on the same page. Is there anything you'd like to share?" But if the relationship isn't important to you, or if you know the person isn't emotionally mature enough to handle a direct conversation, it's okay to let it go and focus on maintaining your distance. Not every battle is worth fighting, and sometimes walking away is the best choice. 5. Focus on your circle. Instead of dwelling on the people who secretly dislike you, invest your time and energy into the relationships that matter. Surround yourself with people who genuinely support, encourage, and uplift you. These are the people who will celebrate your successes, listen when you need to vent, and bring positivity into your life. 6. Let go of the need to be liked. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, let go of the need to be liked by everyone. It's impossible to please everyone, and trying to do so will only leave you feeling drained. Focus instead on being authentic, kind, and true to yourself. The right people will be drawn to your energy, and the ones who aren't, well, they were never meant to be in your corner anyway. Closing words. Embrace your power. At the end of the day, understanding these hidden signs isn't just about spotting negativity. It's about empowerment. It's about recognizing when someone isn't good for your mental or emotional well-being and having the strength to prioritize yourself. Here's the bottom line. Not everyone will like you, and that's okay. What matters is how you choose to respond. Will you let their subtle negativity affect your self-worth? Or will you rise above it, set boundaries, and focus on the people who truly value you? I encourage you to trust your instincts and remember that your energy is precious. Don't waste it on people who secretly dislike you. Instead, invest it in relationships that are built on mutual respect, love, and positivity. And one last thing, if you've noticed these signs in someone close to you, don't beat yourself up. Recognizing them is the first step toward protecting your peace and living a life that's true to you. Thank you for spending your time with me today. If this resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you noticed these signs in your own life? How did you handle it? Let's keep the conversation going because we're all navigating relationships together. Until next time, take care of yourself and your energy. You deserve it.